Welcome to our next podcast for the Internet of Senses for the Sense of Smell. My name is Sofia Ehrich, and I am an art historian, academic researcher, and curator of multisensory experiences. Right now, my main work is with the European-funded project, Odoropa, which advocates for smells and smelling as important to Europe's cultural heritage. And today I have with me Mark Kohoot, who is the founder and CEO of Aeroscena, a pioneer in the science of evidence-based aromatherapy for improving human health and wellness. Mark founded Aeroscena in 2010 with the mission of advancing aromatherapy via the use of scientific research and rigorous testing for use in clinical settings. He previously served as an advisor to the chairman of the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute and uncovered benefits from the little understood science of scent. I really love that line. He spent much of his career working in international business development, specifically in the United States as well as Europe. And his personal interests include art, travel, philosophy, and history, and is a jeweler, woodworker, and sculptor in his free time, which are all olfactory, which I quite enjoyed, or can be olfactory in many ways. So welcome, Mark, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Sophia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into this interesting topic. So we'll talk a bit about aromatherapy used for health and wellness, of course, a little bit about smell and entrepreneurship, and smell and product design and distribution methods, which is, of course, my favorite part, and smell use and safety. Let's jump in.
Sure. Well, I hope I can live up to the lovely introduction. I mean, when I don't think of myself as those things, but when they're read off to you, it's like, oh, okay, those are my hobbies.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, they're who you are. But yeah, I understand that little bit of difficulty there as well. Okay, so yes, of course, I'm happy to have you on the podcast because your expertise and Aeroscena, of course, is fitting for our previous, or to follow our previous podcast interviews about the sense of smell. You're not only trailblazing entrepreneur within this field of smell and a lover of smells, but you also focus your work within the field of evidence-based aromatherapy. Can you please tell us what Aeroscena is and how the company began?
Well, sure. You had mentioned earlier that I was advising the chairman of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Michael Roizen. Dr. Roizen's a pretty well-known author, wellness advocate, television personality to some extent. We were building a wellness institute at the Cleveland Clinic, and there were tremendous influences, adjacencies to wellness modalities like acupuncture, acupressure, smoking cessation, et cetera, just general well-being. But what we noticed was a real lack of solid evidence. The clinical studies were not being done, but if they were being done, they were coming from Japan, the UK, Iran actually has historically been a big publisher in the science. As we looked around at the general marketplace, it was multi-level marketing that was dominating the sale of essential oils. Not to go too deep into that, but there's been all sorts of issues around the way it's sold and the quality of the product and the claims surrounding that we felt that if we could come to this market of aromatherapy with a medical pedigree, where we had done the research, had it peer-reviewed, had it published, we would be creating a company and a brand that consumers could trust when it comes to all things scented. So fast forward now, 13 years later, we have, our offices are housed at the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Center because they've seen, the types of innovation that we bring to healthcare as, in the old days, wellness was its own thing. Now we see wellness being incorporated into multiple aspects of the clinical environment. So it's not a standalone entity anymore, institute anymore. It's now everywhere.
May I interrupt you for just a moment?
Sure.
I'm wondering, how do you define like health and wellness in your own work? Like, what do you classify as that?
Well, health and wellness are somewhat different terms. Traditionally, healthcare meant the treatment of something wrong, a condition, right? Treat, diagnose, cure disease. The wellness, shall we say, groundswell of the last 20 years, maybe it's been coming, has been based in preventive and living a better life. And so as doctors incorporate elements of wellness, you'll get more talk than you would have, say, in the 70s about your diet, about your sleep habits, about stress, things like that. So wellness has really become part of healthcare, so the old distinctions that were there have kind of disappeared. And I think now we treat it more as general health.
Very interesting. Because I mean, I have never really thought about the distinction or like how things have changed in the last couple of years. So it's nice to have that come up here as well. Okay, so it perfectly, I think, goes into our next question, which is that in my work, I often focus on like the quality or how smells can communicate a message, a very storytelling, smells of storytelling or for their hedonic qualities. So in aromatherapy, this is a very different case, or when you're using smells for their health or and wellness properties. Or for their physiological properties. So what does it mean to use smells and essential oils for their bodily and physiological properties?
Yeah, that's a great question, because as we set out to develop empirical evidence around the use of it, we thought, well, how does one do this? Traditionally, you would do a survey. Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? Is it this? Is it that? These sorts of things they're useful, but they can also be subjective. So to be really objective about it, when we say study for anxiety reduction, we measure heart rate, we measure cortisol levels, we measure blood pressure, standard processes, and use a placebo to control it. We really treat this in a very pharmaceutical-like manner. You had mentioned safety, and that leads to a very different discussion because of the regulatory framework involved with scent and essential oils and aromatherapy. I don't know how deep you want to get into that. We could probably do another episode on the regulatory frameworks because they differ worldwide.
Yeah.
But they all fall back on the self-regulatory mechanisms of the major producers, right? So they define for everybody what's really safe, and they make every effort to inform people. It's just scent itself doesn't lend itself to simple terms. So anyway, back to the point is what we had to do was create empirical evidence. So what's known about scent processing in the body, right? It's an electrical signal from a mucus pad at the back of the nose. It goes right to the amygdala and poof, into the brain, right? But it seems to go in three directions. It goes first physiologically, the things that we can measure. And that's why for us, we focus on the physiological measurements. But there's also memory, right? Everyone talks about Faust and the Faustian principles and how you can smell something from your grandma's house 40 years later and it transports you, So you've got that memory. And then there's the emotion. Billions of perfumes are sold every year because they're very emotional. And so suddenly you're talking emotion and memory. These are difficult to make empirical. They're just naturally subjective.
Yeah.
So in our work, we have to limit ourselves to only the things that can be measured until we more credibly prove the science behind things, how different formula, different naturals can yield results.
Can you provide one example of when this has, or one example where you have done this, found evidence based on smell or essential oil used for a physiological or bodily property or function?
Sure. We have, all the full text studies on our website, and you take a long time to read those here. But let's say we did a large study at I have to be careful here, right? You're not supposed to say certain things. So we did a multi-month study in a large southeastern cancer center where thousands of patients were sampled during chemotherapy and infusion. And we measured the stressors, so the anxiety around the actual process. And then there was a secondary measure for mitigating nausea related to the process. So the nausea is fairly simple. It's a binary question. Did you or did you not experience nausea? So that's easy. You just check the box and count. But with the anxiety, right, you could ask, did you feel better? Did you feel worse? And questions were asked, and people did add some subjective results of feeling less stressed and so on. But in the end, we had to focus on the heart rate, the blood pressure, the cortisol swabbing, in addition to that. So then that study was packaged up and written. It was peer reviewed and appeared in the Journal of Oncology Nursing, right? That's just one example of a pretty solid study that provides actual empirical evidence that yields from smells.
Can you reveal what the smell was?
I can. So that's a great question, but let me preface the answer, because when it comes to difficult situations, trying to deal with traumas and stressors and pains and things like that, you never want to use a single note. I say you don't want to use a smell that you can run into in the wild. Because remember, we just spoke a few moments ago about memory. So if a memory of a fragrance is horrible, gut-wrenching nausea, you don't want to go back there if you're a survivor, right? So we have a very, I guess it's a unique approach of how we develop formulas. But I happen to have a nausea relief right here with me. So I can tell you it's got ginger, cardamom, spearmint, and fennel. Okay. We're never going to tell you what the proportions are.
Of course.
but that's how we protect our investment in studies.
Of course, yeah.
Right. And so, if you'd like a little anecdote about this memory trigger, we were in the same office building as a rape crisis center here in Cleveland. We created an uplifting scent that had some of the qualities of de-stressing, but also providing, again, it's hard to say these positive, uplifting things, but it's more subjective. Anyway, we put it all together, and for the clients of this particular center, it was effective during their counseling. right? It put them more at ease. They felt better about the area. So we thought, post-traumatic stress, let's take this to the Veterans Hospital and see how they react. It was a disaster because the veterans who had suffered injury are mostly from the Middle Eastern countries, where they were on patrol in cities where there was a lot of citrus smell. When they smelled what was effective for PTSD in the Rape Crisis Center, it transported them back and increased their anxiety. It did not work in the same way. So this is how this intermixing of the physicality, the emotion, and the memory, they all intersect in a way that, bears thinking.
Yeah. And that's a very true statement also in the work that we do at Otaropa when we're working with museums, or we're talking with museums about the smells that they should be using in the spaces. It's really difficult because you never know what smell is going to trigger someone's memory in a bad or a good way, right? So if someone's in a museum space and then all of a sudden they're unexpectedly hit with this smell that produces a memory, it can be really problematic in a public space. So
right.
It's for smell in general, this is such a common challenge and hurdle that we all face, right? This connection between memory and smell that can impact our work greatly.
Sure. I always, when I'm kind of stumped, I like to think of when we humans were back on the savannah, so to speak, evolving with the plants and the world around us. The sense of smell has played an enormous role in so many things, reproduction, selection of mates, food safety, danger, all these things. And then, 1800s, 1900s, we started to suppress our sense of smells. And we've lost a lot of that. And what we now experience is nothing like the natural world that, a few 100,000 years at least of, evolution has, we need to retrain, we need to relearn.
It's a very good message.
I hope so.
So we'll go back a little bit again to the work that you do, or you have done work with the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute. Do you want to explain a little bit about this collaboration?
Well, Dr. Roizen was the chair there. And in fact, he was a very kind early angel investor to take the leap to build a business out of the opportunity. Really, so we've been given space in their incubator for innovations. We've been there for quite some time. We have access to tremendous amounts of research and opportunity, but it has also been able to teach us the limits of where complementary therapies can go in the largest of the large healthcare institutions, right? An example is the ability to make an insurance reimbursement. Okay, we can create outcome data that is rock solid and worthy of use as a drug. It's a respectably made, quality made thing. However,
did you say comparative therapy?
Complementary.
Complementary therapy. Can you briefly just say what that is?
As an adjunct to, so for example, in post-operative situations, there's nausea. We complement the traditional pharmaceutical protocol. So you take a sniff of this tube, and if it stops your vomiting, that costs the hospital $5. If it doesn't work, they fall back to Zofran. But it's funny because Zofran is actually got a lower success rate than ours, but they're covered by insurance. here in the US, we see this problem in senior care, where the majority of care is parceled and paid for by Medicaid. And so, we did a study about sleep. We kept people asleep all night, but it cost 50 cents a day. And the guy's like, we can give them Valium, diazepam is free. And so that's what we have to do because we're not reimbursed. So this reimbursement means that you've got to make an FDA drug in order to get reimbursed for the most part, right? And the license or the permit to do that is $650,000 last time I checked, right? So there's an ecosystem of large hospitals and pharma that just the way it's worked and, extended life for people and, all these modern miracles that we experience every day, it makes it difficult to break into that particular market without going the path of a pharmaceutical company that obviously has larger resources than an aromatherapy company. So good and bad things, I shouldn't say bad, just we learn the lay of the land and how long it takes and the processes. We run into researchers all the time now. For example, there's an amazing new thing we found that is a sunscreen that doesn't cause cancer. It's an amazing innovation, and in a few years, you'll probably be seeing it. But we're helping partners of ours bring that to market. So it's great. It gives great credibility. We're there, we have access to doctors, but it's really hard to make them a customer. We have to do it through the chaplain's office.
Yeah.
So
that's highlighting a very, also like kind of a bureaucratic way of the United States and insurance companies, right? Which is something that you don't think about every day, but
sure.
Apparent here.
Well, in the contrary sense, in France, we're very well received. Our products are noted and people like them, and our research is held up as good quality research because there isn't the prejudice that I feel had been fostered by multi-level marketing, where you'll say anything to sell a pack of bottles to your neighbor. Yeah. And that's led to this prejudice.
But France really believes in this, was it complementary therapy?
Yeah, well, complementary and integrative medicine would be the full and formal title of this branch.
Yeah.
At least here.
So I think you've kind of answered this question, but I want to give you an opportunity to maybe specifically answer it. Why is it important to use aromatherapy techniques in hospitals and healthcare institutions? Maybe you want to give an example or something from your work.
Well, I guess the first and primary example is it costs less. It's much cheaper to give someone a sniff of an odor from a tube than it is to give them an injection or a prescription or something. Secondarily, it's people are I talk about this intersection of wellness and health care. People are demanding more from their physicians. They say, do you have something that's not so hard on my body? I take 7 prescriptions right now. I don't want to take an 8th. Do you have something that's better or different or things like that? So it's an alternative to harsher products or techniques that yield the same result. It's a great first line of defense. If you get in a car crash and break your leg, you don't need aromatherapy, you need some morphine or something, But in long-term care, in dialysis, it makes all the difference in the world. In imaging, it can make you relaxed. So there are great applications. It just takes time to spread it through the system.
And do you focus mainly on inhalation, or do you also work with other methods?
Yeah, terrific question. We've talked about nausea relief, quite a bit here on the call, but isn't it nice to be able to just give this a puff instantly when you need it? We haven't talked about habituation, and that's a really big aspect of it. And I'll just kind of go there from here. When you're exposed to a smell, and I think again, back on the savanna evolutionary, if you were exposed to a bad smell, I call it a dirty locker room smell, right? You walk in, you go, oh my gosh, this place smells terrible. And then 5 minutes later, you don't even smell it anymore because you've become accustomed to it, right? So the electrical signal from the nose to the brain, the brain says, okay, I got it, I'm not listening anymore. It's like going la, la, la. That habituation, say you want to keep someone asleep all night, you need to expose them to the scent and then wait another 25 minutes to half an hour and expose them again. So we have a lot of experience in observing healthcare situations to know these habituation timelines. So if you're trying to make a better dental experience and reduce dental anxiety, which is a huge issue, you leave it running all the time, the person walks in, they get that fragrance, and then they go back and get their treatment, and their anxiety is lowered. Whereas someone who's getting dialysis and can't move for 4 hours, that scent needs to be made intermittent so that the calm, the lower reduced anxiety biochemistry remains consistent over 4 hours.
That's a good topic to talk about as well, I think, habituation.
Yeah. If I could jump back though to something you mentioned earlier, art and environments. When we put our things in the air, you have to imagine that in a hospital, you cannot have residual effects. Even a water-based diffuser like you buy at the regular stores, that means waters are potential spills are problems. It means mildew, it means mold, it means contaminants. So we had to find a way to polymerize this gel or this into a gel, the essential oils, without losing it. The big outcome here is that it becomes beyond nebulized. It's just they're actually, VOCs aren't all bad. A rose is a VOC when you put your nose by it, right? So these go into the air, they're practically immeasurable. And so actually a friend of mine who does very similar things in France was permitted to perform in the Hall of Versailles during an orchestral piece with fragrance going along with it. And you can only imagine the level of scrutiny an emission of fragrance in Versailles got, right? Mm-hmm. It was a no-go zone. So, these things are really, it's important to think about how they are put into the air, because sometimes they're just sprayed, especially when you've got some less than happy ingredients in there. There are some fairly toxic fragrance out there. I'm sure everyone's walked into a hotel lobby and said, oh my God, what is that horrible stuff? And that leaves residue on everything. So it's kind of an important point.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll change the topic a little bit and go into aromatherapy, smell, and entrepreneurship. So like I mentioned before, you have degrees in international business and marketing and worked in very large companies for many years, making you a businessman. And I want to ask you, why did you start in smell or the aromatherapy industry, and how has your work at Aeroscena differed from your previous work?
Well, it was just circumstance that presented a great opportunity. I had the education and the discipline of the corporate life. I also felt I don't know if oppression is a good word, but you know what I mean? The environment where creativity isn't often part of the game plan, right? It's to execute, to remove emotion and things from the process so that you're making very good objective data. So that kind of helps everyone with the business, right? What has been wonderful about it is I never knew how much of a creative person that I was. I didn't have the chance to practice it. I had hobbies like making little furnitures or taking a jewelry class at the art school, things like that. And they're fun, I like them. But to do it as part of your day-to-day life is really rewarding. So it allows you a little bit of creativity, yet you've got to maintain that discipline. The challenge, well, there's a lot of challenges to it. You never have enough capital, right? You got to have capital. The crafting world, you just have to go to Etsy and see, there's thousands and thousands of people making soaps and shampoos and things like that. And at that point, it gets very, very competitive. So like any business, you have to find your competitive advantage or your niche, or what is it that separates you from everybody else. And in our case, we felt that it was having the empirical data and using it in healthcare would ultimately make it appeal to consumers in general. And in fact, this year, we're starting to launch products with our functional fragrance inside, with our safety pedigree, and all of those sorts of things. So that's going to be an exciting experience.
Yeah, and that also leads into the next question, which is that one of your visions is to provide more transparency and regulations within this field of aromatherapy. And we discussed some of the challenges already of that, I think, but with these essential oils and physiological effects, that it can be a huge undertaking and seems sometimes impossible. So how have you approached this challenge in your own work? In your company?
Well, we're looking for the easiest, we'll just call it the low-hanging fruit, right? We make gel products with aromatherapy that are safe enough for use in healthcare and also functional. We really want to emphasize that safety pedigree because a lot of the aerosols and solid things and, in public restrooms and things like that, they emit a lot of toxic VOCs. You see the use of CRM, that designation, a lot more outside of the USA. And that stands for carcinogenic, reprotoxic, or mutagenic. Right? These are three horrible things that can happen to you from exposure to bad VOCs, and thus some synthetic fragrance have these attributes. And I think you look at places like Germany, they're leading the way on eliminating a lot of these. So in time, we're going to see it. But, you've got a self-regulating industry that doesn't take into account things like bioaccumulation. If you're exposed to a minute quantity of a reprotoxic or a mutagenic compound, for day after day after day, when does that chromosome snap and you get cancer? Nobody knows. We don't know these things yet. Yeah. And so if we can look to remove phthalates, parabens, create safe, effective things, we'd like to replace those little solid sticks that are in people's restrooms or in hotel lobbies, give a better safety profile, make it really about maintaining, again, here we are at the intersection of health and wellness. If we can bring wellness to the public use of fragrance, both in laundry powders and dishwashing soap and all of these sorts of things, that's really living a healthy lifestyle, and that's taking care of your health in a proactive sense.
And what do smells what do smells that do this, like that you use in your home or something, what do those smells look like for you in terms of composition or or creation?
Yeah, well, that's a great point because, we're conditioned to say natural equals safe. The world is filled of natural things that are very unsafe. Synthetic, it immediately conjures thoughts of, oh, this is dangerous. It's made in a lab. It's toxic. And that's not necessarily true either. Everything around us is chemistry. And if you saw the name of the smell of a strawberry, you'd be like, oh my God, I don't want that anywhere near me. This is some horrible chemical. And it's how we are limited in describing the scent of a strawberry, right? So I don't really know the answer. I'm a seeker of the answer. But how does one transmit the knowledge and thought that a product is safe to a consumer who doesn't have a PhD in chemistry, right? I'm looking for the answer.
Yeah, because usually the back of packages, they have these very abstract pictures on them of the hazards or the safety guidelines or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And
which are difficult to navigate.
And even worse, in the US at least, the ingredient on the label will say fragrance. And that's a soup of whatever you want. It doesn't need to be disclosed. So I think you look at companies like SC Johnson is trying to disclose. There was a cosmetics company called Fleur. I think they got acquired, but they disclosed. And it was a great step, but the disclosure was too complex. And you look at like EWG, they have a 1 through 5, and they look at it and they make a pretty decent judgment. But when the label line is fragrance, what can you really say, Yeah. So we're going to work every day to make products that people can trust because we can show that somehow we proved safety. We've talked about the safety organization, and, you have to face the fact that over the last 40 years, they haven't done a great job at protecting consumers. So it's to each of us, to take control of your individual wellness and make it a part of your healthcare, kind of circling back to their opening lines. It's health and wellness are inseparable.
Yeah. I want to make sure we take some time to talk about your smell products, or as I call, smell distribution methods, because I'm obsessed with this in my own work. You've created some products, and do you want to share a few of the products that you have released and how they're used?
Well, it's kind of a quick list. Here's one example. This is one of our inhaler tubes. Why is it a tube? Because, right, you've just got to flip the cap and squeeze it. So we design everything for healthcare. So traditionally, inhalers, aroma sticks, people touch their nose with it and inhale, right? And then their friend uses it or they pass it on, or, you have a cold, whatever. This has a surgical foam. You squeeze it, it puffs it at you. And so this puffing at you makes it shareable, less transmission of germs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's nice, it's convenient, and that's something we're going to do. Next, I talked about solidifying and how we make these gels. Okay, I'll peel one for you. No charge. Right, so this is our freshness seal. And if you have a look, so there it is, right? You can see through it. It's really, I don't know if the light's good enough, but it's kind of a lovely color. This is our calm blend. So these sorts of things, right? These will fit into this machine here in the bottom. And so the machine has the controls for intensity and the timing, right? We talked about how a dentist's office versus dialysis is important. So we've got that. Oh, and here, look, our gel is so fun. Here's a pretty little collection of things you can make with it. So, we're playing around with ideas of, say, air fresheners. So here's another version of a small diffuser with timing, a little more contemporary. The bigger stuff, right, they're kind of industrial and so I can't actually toss them around here, but that's it. And we have our evidence base. We have sleep, calm, focus, energize, curb, an appetite suppressant, nausea relief, and pain management. Is that it? Oh, and fresh. Fresh is so, okay, here's a great example. MGM hotels wanted a signature scent that was safe. And so we're part of the wellness group. There's a Stay Well program, and they have all these aspects in a room for like air purification, aromatherapy, vitamin C shower, no VOCs, all that kind of thing. And one of these goes in the room every month in that machine. But we sat around the table and created a bespoke fragrance for them, which now is, in thousands of rooms. It's really neat. But it was all making sure it was very safe, that it imparted the admittedly subjective qualities that they were looking for. And so we just sat around a table for a couple of days and used scent strips until we found the one that everybody said, that's it. And we've been selling it to them for, 8 or 9 years now, maybe 10. Time flies, I guess that's it. You can always go to shopascents.com and see everything there. We have all the case studies, a big database of research and other studies by people, not just us, but everyone. We're trying to be a repository of useful knowledge for the community of aromatherapy, nice. Right?
I'm seeing that a lot more within this field of smell that we're all trying to share now, which is really, it's beautiful to see.
We're all in it together, I mean, there's Monel, the Tisserand Institute has really done a great job in the UK. Now you see the Gat Fossé getting more and more active in it in Europe. And that's kind of an interesting story that, right, Gat Fossé, he's the father of modern aromatherapy. I might argue it's Paracelsus, but that's another story. They went into, pharmaceutical manufacturing. They kind of got away from their roots. And then not too long ago, they resurrected the Gat Fossé Foundation, and they are rewarding aromatherapists and helping publicize their work. You've got here in the US, there's like the AIA, Alliance of International Aromatherapy. There's the NAHA, National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy, the ANHA, the American Holistic Nurses Association, ICANN, the International Clinical Aromatherapy Network.
Wow. That's a lot of different institutes. It's amazing.
It is. I mean, that's worldwide. And well, there's yours, of course. There's the, I haven't seen much coming out of Asia, but we have had a lot of interest in Malaysia and Singapore by their health systems have actually run some tests on our products. So, cool. Yeah.
Do you want to quickly share what's next for you and Aeroscena?
Well, we really look to move forward in the consumer realm. We have a very exciting partnership emerging with a French company, which would make me personally very happy because I like it there and would like to spend a few months a year. But it was funny, this fellow, the one I told you about it, who did the Versailles concert. He was working with luxury brands and was working on a gel technology in isolation from me. Neither one of us knew we were doing it the same thing, but he was so careful to have perfect scent authentication. Because right, if you mess up Chanel No. 5, then you can't do that. Whereas my focus and obsession was on the safety and the performance, with the smell being secondary, right? Yeah, I've always kind of joke, if we had a cure for a bad disease, but it didn't smell good, people wouldn't use it. It's always got to have a nice nose. So anyhow, we met, and we liked the idea that he's got luxury and beautiful perfuming experience, and we have health, wellness, and evidence-based, that together we could make a really terrific partnership and do some great things together. So that's happening now. Well, we're talking about it, it takes forever.
Cool.
So that's what the future looks like.
Cool. Okay, so last question, the famous last question that I ask all of the podcast interviews. It could be in the industry, or it could simply be a world where we learn to value our sense of smell more. But I want to know from you, what is the future of the smell industry?
The future of the smell industry is about sustainability, safety, and performance. A fellow in the industry I admire very much. Products for people, or perfumery for people and planet. So I think the future of fragrance is going to mirror the society at large, where people are reading the labels, they want to know what they're using, they want it to be safe, they want to know that it's sustainable and good for the planet, and all of these things that I think values that are almost universal now. Fragrance will follow that. The new big fragrances, they're coming from like Henry Rose. They're all natural, they're all safe. Places like that. So I think that's what the future is. And I feel lucky to kind of, be along for the ride at the right time, with hopefully, a contribution to the advancement of the science.
Well, that's happened with food, right? Because it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have food labels.
That's right.
So there you go.
Yep. But it's that challenge, right? And when the ingredient is 24 letters long,
Yeah.
and you go, how do we make that easily? So we'll find a way. There's a lot of people working on it.
Yeah. Okay, well, great to have you today, and thank you so much for your open discussion today. It was very nice and easy to keep the conversation going, so thank you so much for your time.